Noises on a boat. In time, you get used to what's normal on your boat and what's not, and you'll jump to your feet at the slightest sound that's unusual. But let's talk a little bit more about one of the noises that gets on almost everyone's nerves. Hi, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and you're listening to the Boat Galley Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about how to stop clanking halyards on a sailboat. First, though, I want to address some of the noises that you may hear on this podcast. A couple of listeners asked me about background noises when I was at the Annapolis Sailboat Show. Well, the answer is that I live on our boat, and so that's where I record the podcasts. You may hear some wind or waves slapping the hull or dinghies going by. I try to keep it as quiet as possible, but that's one of the realities of living on a boat. You can't completely insulate yourself from the world around you. This episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Rainman Watermakers and Seatask. Rainman Watermakers are capable of producing up to 37 gallons of fresh, clean drinking water per hour from seawater. Portable and installed models are available, all with off-the-shelf parts. Configurations are available in AC, 12-volt DC, and even a gasoline system, with new 2019 models being smaller, lighter, and quieter than ever. Seatask is the premier U.S. facility for Rainman Watermakers. Visit them at seataskgroup.com to learn more. Clank, clank, clank. The halyards were quiet earlier, but as the wind changed, they're driving you nuts, particularly if you're trying to sleep. But if you're new, it can be equally frustrating to figure out how to stop the clanking. First off, what seems like the obvious choice, tightening the halyards so there's no slack to clank, does not work. It just changes the pitch of the clank. On our personal boats and several charter boats that we have been on, we've learned numerous ways that do work. All involve getting the halyard far enough away from the mast that it can't bang against it. And note that if you have external halyards, both ends may need to be led away from the mast. Now, the first way is bungeeing your halyards to the side stays. Using bungee cords to pull halyards away from the mast is the fastest and easiest solution, if you have a bunch of bungee cords. Simply slack the halyard a bit, hook the bungee on it, and then hook the bungee on the side stay. If it's too long to really pull the halyard off the mast, we either tie a knot in the bungee or wrap the bungee around the side stay and hook it back on the halyard, or on another halyard if there's two that we need to keep quiet. Out in the sun, bungees will last anywhere from 6 months to a year. We use them for many things and tend to just buy a jar of varied sizes, either from a home improvement store or on Amazon. I've put a link in the show notes. Now, the mini bungee cords are great for many things on a boat, but they aren't strong enough to keep the halyards from clanking. You need to have the ones that are about 1/4 inch in diameter to work on a halyard. Now, an alternative, in a pinch, you can do the same thing with a piece of line, but it takes longer to set it up and longer to unrig when you want to sail. Smaller line works better than heavy line for this. There's another way to keep halyards off the mast, a shroud cleat. These are usually used for cleating off the flag halyards, but they often have an eye at the top that you can clip a halyard to. Tighten the halyard so there is no slack to slap against the mast. You can get lightweight nylon and plastic shroud cleats with eyes on Amazon, but we generally prefer the stainless ones available from C. Sherman Johnson via West Marine. Interestingly, they're about the same price as many of the lesser quality ones on Amazon. Again, there's a link in the show notes. Now, these are slightly cheaper if you get them from Defender, but if you're near a West Marine store, their free ship to store more than makes up to it. Next, you can hook the halyards to the handrails. If your halyards are long enough and you have handrails in the right spot, you can wrap the halyard around the handrail and clip it back to itself, then tightening the halyard to keep it off the mast. Do you have a belaying pin rack? Sometimes classic-looking boats, such as our former Tayana 37, has a rack of belang pins on the shrouds. These are perfect for attaching the halyards to. Depending on the halyard length, you can wrap them around the pins or just wrap them around the bar and clip them back on the halyard, or make a loop from another line around the bar and clip the halyard to that. Again, tighten the halyard so there is no slack. Now, be kind to your neighbors. Even if you don't spend nights on your boat, be kind to your neighbors and silence your halyards. If you're not on your boat full time or leaving for a few days, you probably have one or two people that you've asked to keep an eye on your boat. Be sure that they know it's okay to come aboard to quiet a clanking halyard, should the need arise. If they're being driven nuts by your boat, you certainly want them to be able to solve the problem, don't you? Thanks for listening to this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast. If you like the show, please be sure to subscribe in your podcast app. And reviews are always welcome.